Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to the CS Educator Grants PD program Hangout on Air for February. We're excited to have you here. Maybe we'll wait a minute or two to help folks get along and join the Hangout.
Sounds good.
My name is Olga Garcia, for those of you that I haven't met yet, and I'm joined by
Sloan Davis.
We are the program managers at Google that run this phenomenal grant program. So we're excited to join you all today in this adventure of the 2018 application. Thanks again for coming to be a part of this. Maybe we'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started.
That sounds good.
Okay, cool. So for those of you that are interested, we are in Mountain View, California. We are at Google's headquarters. It's a phenomenal place to be. I do have to say.
We are in the thick of winter, which means a horrendous freezing low temperature of about 39 degrees at night. As a native Wisconsinite, I have lost all of my winter street cred. I now require a jacket about 55 degrees, whereas before that was like celebrated t-shirt weather. But I can't say I miss shoveling or digging my car out in the mornings.
Ditto. I'm from New Jersey, and I very much appreciate being able to wear a very light sweater in February. Yep, February. Right, yep. If those of you that are going to SIGSI next week that are not from the East Coast, I think we have to bring heavy jackets and
some waterproof layers.
Oh, yeah. It already feels stressful, and we haven't even left yet.
Started packing, yeah.
Well, I think it's 10:33. It's 3 after. Let's go ahead and get started.
Sounds good.
So give me 1 second. So friendly reminder to everyone to please remember to apply by March 2nd. Applications are open until 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. And the link to apply is g.co/CSEDUgrants/apply. On that page, you'll actually see the application companion as well, which we'll actually be going through in just a little bit. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. And please remember to hit submit to officially apply for a grant in 2018. We also want to invite you, as we had said before, to join us at SIGSI. So we will be at SIGSI. A pretty large contingent of Google will actually be there. So visit us at our booth, number 309, or you can come and join us. We are hosting a Birds of a Feather. Sloan will actually be taking us through this phenomenal journey of really learning about what it takes to provide equitable computer science professional development at scale. So the Birds of a Feather session is Thursday, February 22nd from 5:30 to 6 p.m. in room 949. And we invite you, if you are interested in coming to the Birds of a Feather, please do come a little bit early. We'll have some snacks and we'll be there so we can actually talk to you about questions that you may have around your application. So today we want to share with you a few key things. So we'll explain to you a little bit more about the 2018 application and what the program is actually for. We'll walk you through the recent submission to the Respect Conference, which Sloan has done a phenomenal job putting together this incredible paper. And then last but not least, we'll walk you through some of the best practices for your applications in 2018. So we will specifically go through different components of the application companion and hopefully help to provide some insights as to how to do a competitive application this year.
All right, I want to double check and make sure that we're screen sharing slides before we get any further.
Ah, yes. Thank you.
All right, I think you can see what we see now. We'll be sure to dial in and make sure that everything is broadcasting appropriately as we move forward.
Thanks.
All right.
And in case you were wondering, we will be sharing these slides afterwards. So, no fear if you have more questions. We'll be sharing them afterward. When we think about the mission of this program that was formerly known as CS4 HS, we really aim to equitably increase the effectiveness of computer science educators at scale. And the way that we think about that is in 3 main ways. So one, it's about providing equity. how are we serving the communities that haven't quite had an infusion of computer science education resources yet? And we call those low computer science momentum communities, and making sure that we're providing an equitable experience for the students, particularly in those communities, to gain access to computer science. Next, we really think about the effectiveness of the educator themselves. So does this educator or these groups of educators, do they feel confident and really equipped to integrate computer science and computational thinking inside the classroom? And then last but not least, we think about scale. So, providing professional development isn't necessarily a cookie cutter experience. It's really a localized process for educators. But how can we continue to provide more and more access to educators around the country and around the world, so that they can all feel confident and competent in integrating computer science and computational thinking into their classrooms? So a friendly reminder who can apply. So we encourage education nonprofits to please apply to our program. Those include school districts, universities, research institutions, PD practitioners, school boards, and offices of education. All of those qualify as applicants. You do have to be a 501c3 in order to receive an award. And then this is a global program, so funding is available outside of the US and primarily in Africa, Australia, Canada, China, Europe, Middle East, New Zealand, and of course in the US. So the program has been around for 10 years and we're super excited. This is our birthday year. Indeed. I always forget to add a GIF of like a birthday.
Some candles,
right,
confetti,
exactly.
perhaps.
Yay! This is the moment where we celebrate. But over the past 10 years, we've awarded $13 million in grants in over 50 countries, and over 50,000 educators have actually gone through programs that are supported by our educator grants. But the most important part here is really how have we been able to impact students? And we're very happy to share that in the past 10 years, we have been able to impact about 2 million students because of the brilliant efforts of providers like yourselves. Whether you're first-time providers or seasoned providers, the students are really benefiting. And so part of this birthday isn't just us celebrating for ourselves, but it's also a huge thank you to all of you for your dedication and partnership in computer science education. Even if you haven't been funded yet by our program, we do appreciate how much you've dedicated to making the world a better place.
And one of my favorite things about professional development that we'll definitely be talking about more in our 60 Birds of a Feather session is that professional development is scalable, it is sustainable in that one teacher reaches an average of 56 students per academic year with their computer science knowledge, according to our surveys. But if they continue teaching for additional years using that same computer science knowledge, that's 56 students per year, right? So that 2 million number counts the amount of students that we estimate CS4 HS or computer science educator grant teachers have impacted in their 1 year that they attended one PD opportunity. But if that one teacher continues teaching computer science over time, that will only scale the reach of students even further.
Thank you so much, Sloan. Thank you, thank you. Sloan is our resident research and evaluations expert, and I'm excited for you guys to hear about all of the brilliant research that she's been doing, particularly over the past 2 years, which has led us to our respect paper. Okay, moving along. So I think you just alluded to this, Sloan. I think it would actually make sense for you to continue to kind of share a little bit more on this slide.
So, Google's really interested in solving for educator professional development in computer science because we have seen issues of access to computer science education and representation in CS that are still persisting today, even though we've made incredible gains in computer science education. So if we think about 3 different types of educators, these are many of our friends, grantees, and teachers who have gone through professional development opportunities supported by Google. So on the left, we have Brian, who started as an advocate for computer science education and is now the CS coordinator at San Francisco Unified School District. So coordinating for a large urban district with tons of students with diverse needs and their learning experiences. In the middle, we have Carla Hesterkroff, who is a grantee for the past 2 years of the grant program. And she is working in rural communities that have very low access to computer science education. I remember when I first talked to her, she reminded me that she is the only computer science faculty at her local community college. And the work that she's been able to do through grassroots organizing in rural Wyoming has been just completely inspiring. And then on the East Coast, we have Daryl Dietrich, who was at the very first CS4 HS workshop 10 years ago in Carnegie Mellon. And since then, he has become not only an incredibly successful CS teacher, but also an advocate at the state and national levels for computer science. So he's an instrumental member of the Computer Science Teachers Association. Right now, he's garnering support for legislation in New Jersey to create discrete pathways for teachers to become certified in computer science. And really, these three individuals illustrate how different an education landscape can look from one city to another, from one state to another, from one country to another, and that the solutions that are needed for professional development in computer science are radically different depending on what community you're hoping to serve and engage.
Thanks, Flo. Well, actually, I wanted to add one more piece before we transition over. So
Sure.
I think, we'll continue to speak to this point, but it really is about finding what's right for your community. And we like sharing these three journeys, if you will, of computer science education, because we really want to continue to reemphasize that we understand that not everyone has been a PD provider for the past 10 years. And, some folks are really new to this and eager to learn. There is no right solution. What works for Brian in San Francisco is not exactly the same thing that's going to work for Carla in Wyoming. And so we're really excited in 2018 to see applications that, take a very mindful approach to how their community really needs professional development implemented for the educators in that specific community. So more to come on that. Before we get there, we're actually going to talk to you a little bit about what we've learned in our research for the past 2 years and what we submitted for Respect. Over to you, Sloan.
Thank you, Olga. So Respect is a partner conference with SIGSE that specifically focuses on equity in computer science education. And we have been thinking a lot about equity in computer science education at Google. So first, I definitely want to call out that we have a huge body of research that colleagues on our CS education team have completed in equity and computer science education. So please navigate to g.co/CSEDU research to learn more about these reports. So just sort of a high-level overview. Not only do professional development solutions vary based on the community, but issues of equity in computer science vary based on community as well. So, speaking about the United States, issues of representation and access to computer science education tend to cluster around girls, Black and Latino students, Native students, students in low socioeconomic areas or rural areas, and all of the intersectional identities in between. And so many of the reports that you'll see on the CS Education Research site are focused on those areas and understanding how we can increase those students' participation in computer science and encourage them to pursue the discipline if they're so interested. So not only are there structural barriers like the inability to access computer science classes or a lack of access to a computer at home, there's also social barriers. Parents are less likely to encourage girls to pursue computer science, or underrepresented students are less likely to see people like themselves doing computer science on TV or in movies, or even just in the people that they know in their lives. So some of this research has cited that top barriers to providing computer science in rural and small town districts, and we know this to be true for even urban districts as well, is that there is a significant lack of teachers with computer science skills. If I remember correctly, 64% of the principals surveyed in the rural and small town brief indicated that lack of teachers with computer science skills is the #1 reason why they're unable to increase the CS offerings at their school. So when we think about how to increase equity and access to computer science education, we really think about the institutional change that comes with professional development. Like we mentioned earlier, that training one teacher who stays in their profession for up to 5 years can impact hundreds of students over their career. And as I mentioned, we know that this issue of lack of teachers with CS skills, or the lack of money and time to train existing teachers on computer science, is prevalent across the country. So thinking about our program and how that relates to the work that we do, we distribute surveys to our teachers who participate in Google-supported professional development opportunities every year, a pre-survey and a post-survey at the first and last PD session. And we're looking to understand the trends of the types of teachers that are coming to these PD opportunities, what they're learning, what their needs are, what their concerns are. And the Respect paper really took a look at not only are we seeing increases in teacher confidence, competence, and access to resources, but also what are we understanding about the approach to professional development as an education ecosystem. So one of the biggest challenges in professional development is identifying the professional development needs that teachers have, evaluating the various professional development options that are out there, and then assessing the educator and student outcomes as a result of the professional development. And this problem is prevalent across all disciplines, but even more so in computer science education, where there isn't a suite of a century of research on how to teach computer science. So while we're making incredible gains in how to teach computer science and increasing access, and even in providing professional development, there's still work to be done on evaluating professional development to understand if it's really having the impact that we want it to have for teachers and students. So related to equity, equity in computer science education can be worsened when teachers aren't prepared for what they're about to face in the classroom. You know, one of the most important skills in computer science is actually problem solving, being able to stick it out when things get tough and persist until you can find the right solution. And if teachers aren't prepared to transfer that to their students, and then some students have that problem solving skill already in the classroom and other students are still working on their problem solving skills, those students are going to perform differently over the course of the year. The student that already had that skill is going to continue to improve, and the teacher might not know how to equip that student without the problem-solving skill in order to succeed in computer science. So if we don't know what the needs of the classroom are and we don't prepare the educators appropriately for that, it can worsen equity divides. And further, if we're unable to track the outcomes of professional development, did teachers actually improve their confidence and competence? That can also worsen CS access and achievement divides because we're not tracking whether or not the divides are getting worse. We're assuming they're getting better because teachers are getting trained, and we're not actually looking at the data to see if that's true. So in summary, the Respect submission, which I've provided a link to there, goo.gl/lowercase c, uppercase v, uppercase h, 69 lowercase q, is an exploration that says you can evaluate over 30 professional development opportunities with the same evaluation model and still receive statistically significant data about the outcomes that the teachers are having. So we are seeing statistically significant increases in confidence and competence, even though all of the professional development opportunities that we support through funding and structure over the year, we are able to see increases that are predictable and consistent despite the variations that we see in the different PD opportunities, which I think, you know, that's how we learn every year what is important to prioritize for this program. And every year when we finish the data analysis with our teacher evaluations, we directly translate that into our application, our companion, our eligibility requirements. So maybe we should head over there and start talking
I think that's
about
a great idea. And I'm glad that you actually shared that, you know, just kind of showing you guys a little bit of what happens behind the curtain. You know, Sloan's absolutely right. We do a pretty rigorous evaluations process throughout the year and learn a lot from our grantees so that we can continue to improve and iterate on the program, so that, you know, we do an equally as good of job, hopefully, to serve you, our providers. So I'm going to, in a moment, we're ready to switch into what actually makes a competitive application.
I think so.
All right, so before we get started, I do want to point out, if you are watching this on YouTube, we encourage you to use the chat box that's on the right of the screen if you have questions for us. We'll answer questions towards the end, but please do capture those there because we are monitoring the chat. So I think we mentioned before, the four main tenets of what we look for in terms of building a sustainable educator community for computer science education, of course, is really making sure that in addition to the funding that we're providing, that our communities are really seeking additional funding so that their impact is really increased for those grantees and those educators. A very large component of the program is really making sure that each of these PD programs are actually localized, that the PD is actually designed for the educators of that particular community. Because again, there's not a one-size-fits-all PD program. Something that may work in one community may not actually work in the other. So having that kind of mindfulness in your application will highly make your application very competitive. Equity, of course, is at the forefront of everything that we do. So making sure that we're increasing access to computer science education in an equitable way. So, really making sure that your application demonstrates how you interpret equity in your particular community and how you anticipate to either improve the equity gaps or just be, kind of a forcing function to kind of bring it more to light. And then last but not least, as a long-standing program here at Google and in the computer science professional development landscape, we hope to continue to work in the space where we serve the educators that obviously we care deeply about. So this year, applications are open for middle school, high school, and pre-service educators. So something to bear in mind, it doesn't necessarily have to only be for high school, where it traditionally was in the years past. Now the community has really opened up for different kinds of educators. So we did provide a few different resources to help you in your writing process for your application this year. So we encourage you to actually head over to the eligibility criteria and really learn that as far as what we consider important for applications. We do have an application companion that is really a guideline to how to actually build your application competitively. We will be going through it in just a moment. Well, at a high level, we'll be going through it. We built out a lot of resources for grantees on our website as well. Something that we heard in some user studies last year was that, especially for first-time providers, they weren't quite clear what does a good or successful grantee application look like and PD program. So what we tried to do was actually capture some of the stories of our grantees that have been very successful in their own individual communities and provide those as case studies, particularly for our first-time providers. Code.org, if you are not familiar with, is a phenomenal organization that has a ton of resources for PD on their website. So we encourage you to take a look at some of their resources. The University of Chicago also wrote a research paper in 2013 that really kind of breaks down what it takes to build a PD program. And it basically goes step by step. So especially for our first-time providers, if you're kind of looking for a roadmap, I would highly encourage you to read this paper because it's a super useful resource for you to start building that the program in your community. And then last but not least, definitely tap into the CSTA, that's the Computer Science Teachers Association. They are nationwide and Canada as well, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yep. So all of North America. Phenomenal association of educators in the K through 12 space, really dedicated to computer science education. So especially if you're new, tap into their networks, or if you're already a seasoned PD provider and kind of looking to expand your reach and looking for different partnerships and haven't worked with CSTA yet, we highly encourage you to work with them in this year.
Absolutely.
So with that, I'm going to actually transition it over to Sloan, and Sloan is actually going to take us through our application companion for 2018.
So as I mentioned earlier, every year we use those survey data and the conclusions that we draw to inform the eligibility and programming that we put forth for the next grant cycle. So the first piece of this, the first section of the application that we cover in the companion is the educator audience and partnerships. And one of the most important things that we've learned over the years of supporting computer science professional development programs is that PD opportunities that are directly catered to the needs of the educators they serve produce greater outcomes for those teachers. So in our research paper, you can read that for educators whose expectations were met, their outcomes were more significant statistically and higher overall. And this is largely, you know, if you look at the computer science education landscape across the country, some states have teacher certification pathways, other states have standards, this state has graduation requirements, while that state has none of the above. So really what might work in a California or in New York might not be the right solution for professional development in South Dakota or Alabama. Who knows? We look for you to identify the educator audience that you hope to serve. What are their needs? What is their access to computer science like right now? And then who are the partners in your community that you're going to bring in that will help support the professional development and its goals? Many folks choose to leverage, so if you're a district applicant, you might reach with the local university and partner with their School of Education and School of Computer Science. You might reach out to local businesses who use computer science in their everyday work to help teachers understand how computer science is applied in the industry or as a job. You might also connect with other community organizations who can help support the teachers throughout the year. In general, who are those partners that'll help increase your educators' success with computer science, and how are they going to add to the professional development? Up next, we have the content, format, and schedule section. So this is kind of the nitty-gritty, the what of what your educators will gain from participating in your PD opportunity. So what is the computer science content that they will be learning, and how does it map to the needs of the educator audience? If you've identified that you're going to be working with middle school educators who have no CS experience, but you're going straight into data analytics and Java, that's PD content that does not map to the needs of the educator audience. So we're looking for that relationship there. So what are the computer science subject matter knowledge, the curricular knowledge? Does it map to a certain curriculum or lesson plans or tools? What is the pedagogical knowledge? What does it take? What are the tools and strategies needed to teach computer science? And then how does that all fit together into one suite of learning? Kind of the syllabus for the professional development is how you might think of this section.
I would also add some, particularly for our first-time providers, you know, you may or may not really have a good sense of what your educators are going to need. So we encourage you to seek out some expertise. We've seen folks sometimes pair up with university faculty, with PD providers that are actually kind of specialists in computer science. So, you know, we encourage, that kind of ties into our partnerships from before. So if you are newer to creating a PD program and kind of feeling a little bit lost here, definitely reach out in your local community so that you guys can apply together and really provide a sound proposal of the kinds of content and kind of the PD needs of the educators themselves.
Absolutely. All right, the next section that we have is plans for community of practice. So if content, format, and schedule was the what of your PD opportunity, the community of practice is the how. How are teachers going to learn this content and interact with each other and bolster their confidence? So one of the things that we're really calling out this year is that we encourage applicants to think about how they can leverage a professional network like the Computer Science Teachers Association or other organizations for computer science education to help support their community of practice. A localized community of practice is incredibly important. very often a CS educator will be the only one at their school who teaches computer science, or if multiple types of educators like math and language arts and arts are all learning computational thinking, that they can learn from each other on how they're incorporating computational thinking into their teaching. So while a localized community of practice is incredibly important so that a focused community of educators can support and learn from each other, connecting with an established professional partner like CSTA will only help to increase the educator's access to resources and knowledge and techniques in computer science education. And then beyond that, we're looking for the kind of elements or the environment that you will help build to ensure that the educators own the direction of the community of practice, that the concepts that they're struggling with or the rabbit holes that they want to stumble down, that they have the structure and freedom to explore those things collaboratively, rather than kind of assigning them homework, or that it really comes from the needs of the educators rather than a preset suite of accomplishments.
And Sloan, a great example of a strong COP and kind of the result of that is Daryl. So we heard about Daryl's story earlier in the tale of 3 CS educators. Daryl participated in the first COP that was part of, was it Fran's program?
I believe so.
Well, okay. I know that he was part of a COP out of Rutgers, and, has continued to build his ability to be an advocate because of the support that he actually got in the COP. And then he kind of moved on to this other realm of becoming a sage, if you will, for other educators that were interested in getting involved in computer science education. So the benefits of the COP really extend beyond just a support network. It really helps to build that efficacy for those individuals in that group so that they can then be more, kind of march on the street for computer science education in their communities.
Absolutely. And, in a lot of the research that I've been doing over the last year, many of the papers have indicated that a community of practice can help educators overcome socioeconomic barriers to education. So in places that have fewer access to resources or otherwise struggle to produce student achievement outcomes that are desired, having a community of practice where educators can feel like they have the support, the ability to troubleshoot content, the trust, and just a sounding board to rely on can help increase those student outcomes significantly.
Brilliant. What's next, Sloan?
Well, that would be ongoing commitment. So something that is incredibly important for the success of computer science educators is that they receive ongoing support over the course of their implementation. And while that doesn't mean having one-on-one tutor sessions every week to ensure that things are moving as expected, that does mean that they know where to go next when they're stuck or they have a question, or they finish 1 year of CS teaching and then they want to take it the next step further and they know where to go after that. So we're eager to see your vision for how you might support computer science educators beyond just the 2018-2019 academic year. Does that mean that your community of practice will continue and grow and has a plan to recruit new members? Does it mean that you might plan to recruit new teachers every year as you expand your professional development offerings? How might you leverage other organizations in your community to contribute funding and support for your professional development opportunity in the future?
And, this is really where we want to kind of see your logic, the logic behind how you're really thinking of your community and the longevity of the community as it relates to computer science education. So, I think that the vision piece is super important. So help us understand what your vision is to sustain computer science education in your particular community.
All right, and then our final application section is the budget overview. So we do have a few restrictions about how budget can be spent. The first is that it cannot be assessed for organizational overhead. Some organizations take a flat fee off any grant or gift that is accepted for administration of the gift, but we are unable to accommodate those requests. We also require that 10% of your budget request be allocated to that community of practice, those ongoing supports and activities for the educators throughout the academic year. And then we really want to encourage our applicants to reach one educator per $500 of funding requested. So we also understand that for some communities, that might not be reasonable, that you may only have, 15 educators at your disposal for whom it really makes sense for them to attend a CSPD opportunity. And that doesn't limit you to 15 times $500, and anything that you request above that is an automatic no. But we're really looking to see that you have thought intentionally about the costs of delivering a professional development opportunity, and that they relate very closely to the needs that the educators have.
Well, thank you so much, Sloan, for walking us through the application companion. A friendly reminder again, applications are open through March 2nd before 11:59 p.m. You can apply for up to $35,000 this year, and we encourage PD programs that, for programs for educators that are either in middle school, high school, or pre-service programs. Again, the application link is listed here on this slide. And at this point, I think we can pause for a moment. I see that there is one question. For those of you that have other questions, please do add them to the chat, and we'll start answering any questions that you may have at this point.
Absolutely. So the first question that we see is from Laura. Is the survey that was administered for the Respect project available? I have kind of a multi-part question or answer for you, Laura. So if you need to clarify your question further, please be sure to add it in. So first, we will be sharing the questions that are asked on the survey at the session in Baltimore. So if you're able to attend in SIGC, please feel free to come up, say hello, and we'll be sharing the information there. We are also looking for ways to share the surveys with the education community at large, so that it's not only for grantees. And then the third part of my question is, is that grantees who are accepted into the 2018 cycle will receive the surveys to distribute to their educators. So let's see, we've got grantees get copies of the surveys, we're sharing it at the conferences. We're looking into how we can share it more widely. So Laura, if you have further questions about that, please be sure to reach out. And of course, for those of you who might be interested in seeing the language of the surveys, just email us, csedogrants@google.com. When we do figure out the right way to share the survey measures externally with the education community, we can send an email to those folks who indicated that they were interested.
Great, thank you, Sam. Thank you, Laura, for your question.
Absolutely.
Does anyone else have any questions? It sounds like we went through a lot, so we totally understand if we have 100% overwhelmed you, but we wanted to make sure that this year you had the right tools to build a competitive application.
And of course, if you're still working on your application and a question comes up later, reach out to us by email, csedogrants@google.com. We actually are the people who will reply. This is the team who does the program. We'll be the people in Baltimore next week. We're not just talking heads. So we definitely want to hear your questions and be sure to answer.
Well, and if you're not able to attend SIGSI, I know that that's not necessarily an option for everyone. We'll be sharing more updates via our newsletter. So if you haven't already provided us your email, or are joining us through the G+ community, please do email us directly, and we'll put our email on in just a moment so you guys can have that and let us know, and we'll be happy to add you to our email newsletter. So it looks like we have one more question from Catherine.
Coming in from Catherine. Is there a plan to expand the program to accept teachers of grades K-5 in the future? I have sent out a survey to my area, and there is an interested need for CSPD for these grade levels.
Great question.
This is a great question. So we have specifically made the eligibility that content proposed for the 2018 cycle of the CS Educator PD Grants program be tailored for an in-class implementation with students aged 11 to 18. So that's kind of middle school, high school. However, many of the same concepts that are relevant for teaching computer science at the middle school and high school levels are just as relevant for elementary educators as well. So CS fundamentals about data, problem solving, analytics, algorithms, those concepts are relevant for all educators. However, the exact tools, curricula, strategies, pedagogies that are discussed for middle school and high school might not be relevant. So while we're looking to see that your content is catered towards the middle school or high school in-class application of computer science, that does not exclude any education, elementary educators from attending that PD opportunity catered towards students aged 11 to 18.
And Catherine, I would say, give it a stab. You never know, right? We'd love to see your program, and obviously we're not sure where you are located in the US, but please do feel welcome to apply, and at some point there might be an expansion. We have to kind of survey the landscape. So we encourage you either way to just go through the application process and kind of show us what it is that you're thinking and why your educators actually are in need of this kind of PD program. So we're monitoring the chat to make sure that we can answer any questions. I think we'll let you guys type away while we actually shed some light on one other thing. So this year we do have, probably say, quite a few new first-time providers that are kind of new to providing professional development in this capacity. So we encourage those of you that are new to use the resources that we've outlined, to please do reach out to us if you have questions. And you know, there's some really phenomenal people in the computer science professional development space, particularly at the university level, that have been doing this, you know, since 2004. I mean, really like way beyond when Google has been involved, and even before that. So encourage you to find some expertise through them, and really think about how to design a program that can really help your educators in your particular community. But again, we want to see the logic behind how you put together your application. So not everything has to be perfect. We totally understand that, you know, especially if you're a first-time provider, you may not know exactly the kinds of content pieces that you want to integrate into your program. You may not have the perfect formula for your COP yet. You may not have that vision quite fleshed out yet. The point of the exercise is really to demonstrate a logical and thoughtful approach to designing a professional development program that can help educators in your community. So for the first-time providers out there, please, you know, don't get stressed out if you can't necessarily answer everything to perfection. That's not what we're looking for. We're really looking for the logic behind how you answer the questions and how you approach designing a PD program in a way that is localized and equitable for educators.
Absolutely. I see we do have one more question that came in. Thinking about if a PD opportunity wants to serve pre-service educators, it says, we are a university with a teacher education program. We work with teachers in a variety of school districts. Is it okay if we partner with a community PD provider, but not a school system? So the short answer I would say is, if you have teachers who are in a variety of school districts, then you've got a ton of school district partners, and that's awesome. So ways that you can think about partnerships with school systems or districts for pre-service programs is, do the educators have a practicum, an in-classroom experience where they're alongside an in-service teacher? And could the pre-service teacher take their CS content and transfer it to the in-service teacher? Or could the pre-service educator help, maybe your community of practice activity could be the pre-service educators thinking about how they would approach their future principal to say, this is why computer science education is important, and here are examples of how we can start teaching it now. So you don't necessarily have to be working with one district and all of the teachers come from that one district. But if you plan to work with a variety of districts, that you can understand what the CS needs are in each district, or for the pre-service programs, you know, really we're looking for you to tell us what the landscape looks like in your local community and who the best partners are to increase access to computer science education. The requirements that we've set out in the eligibility are the lighthouses of what a good PD program looks like. But we know that, like we've said earlier, it's just not a one-size-fits-all solution. So if there's something, you know, in your, for example, I learned recently that all of Hawaii is one school district. So, for example, if we had said you have to have 2 school district partners, but we had an applicant from Hawaii and they said to us, hey, look, things in Hawaii are a little different. We've got one district, but here's how we plan to work with them. We totally understand. So just demonstrate to us that you know what your local community needs in computer science education, and that you've thought holistically about how your professional development opportunity will meet those needs. And of course, you can always reach out to us by email to ask specific questions before you get too far in one direction or the other.
And if you're curious, so the application itself, the software is built in such a way that allows you to go from section to section and jump between sections. So if you feel very confident about your content and you want to finish that section, but haven't quite sorted out yet what the ongoing commitment looks like, or have different elements for your educator audience that you need to go back to, you can pause your application and continue to go back and forth. And then a small nuance, but a very important topic is please, please, please hit the submit button. It is at the bottom. Once all of the sections are done, you must hit submit in order for the application to come to us so that we can actually review it. Otherwise, we would not have received your submission, and it unfortunately wouldn't be considered part of this grant process. So please do hit the big red button to ensure that you submitted.
All right, let's see if we get any more questions coming in.
Well, I think what we can say, Sloan, is that we are here to answer your questions. Let me actually put our email down here. If you do have additional questions, please reach out to us. Our email is csedogrants@google.com. Again, we're obviously the people behind the program, but we care deeply about your experience as you design your PD program for your community. So please utilize us as a resource. The application companion is available to anyone that's interested in kind of diving in a little bit further. And there's a lot more detail in the companion itself. We just kind of went through the high level elements of the companion, but we encourage you to really dig into the companion further. And then there are case studies on the website to kind of give you a sense of other people who have implemented their PD programs in their own specific communities and how that has looked. And then, last but not least, of course, is just please reach out to us. We do have another YouTube video where we walked through the application process and actually walked through our data. So Laura, you might be interested in that, that particular hangout from before, because it is really interesting what Sloan had learned and the research process that she went through over a span of 2 years with our grantees. So encourage you to watch all of our YouTube videos and hopefully learn as much as you can so that this year your application is just as competitive. And with that, I think we are at a great place to pause and say, again, thank you. Thank you for your dedication to computer science education. Thank you for considering Google and our Educator Grants program to help your particular community of educators. Cool?
We're excited to see what you submit.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see some of you at SIGSI next week. Thank you all so much. Bye.